for now, we're going to talk about the different types of unemployment out there. We're going to see that some parts of unemployment are normal and some parts of unemployment are due to business cycles. So let's just look through that together. Okay, so the natural rate of unemployment is the part of unemployment which is natural, which is normal and okay. And there's the cyclical unemployment that is not so good. The natural unemployment has fluctuated over the years in Canada. It's been between 6 and 8%, so it's not really desired or not really normal to have unemployment rates lower than that in Canada. This is really the rate of unemployment that we have when we reach the output level at full employment that we'll talk about later on. But when it starts fluctuating around this natural rate, that's our cyclical unemployment. And it's the short run ups and downs of economic activity. So it can be an up. If we look at this graph over here, they're kind of representing this line here as the natural unemployment rate. But we could see that the observed unemployment rate when we go through the recession cycles is higher because of all of this cyclical unemployment. But sometimes we can have it slightly lower. So what is a part of natural rate of unemployment? Well, there's two big parts, frictional and structural unemployment. For the people who've used or will look at the Reagan textbook, they treat this a little bit differently, and I'll kind of talk about the distinguishes. Frictional unemployment, which is also called frictional unemployment in other textbooks, is really that job search unemployment. It's that amount of time that you spend looking for a job. So the comparison that we can make in this is the whole idea of if you're in a relationship and you end up getting out of your relationship, doesn't mean that you're going to accept the first offer there is on the market. You're going to kind of sort things around, you're going to look around, and you're going to try to find that best match possible. So there is going to be a certain amount of time that you will not be in a relationship. Same thing goes for unemployment. If you lose your job, you're not necessarily going to find the first job. So it doesn't mean that if you don't find a job immediately that there is no jobs out there. What it means is that you're not really finding that match. So it's really a matching problem. So what we want to try to find a way to find that match as quickly as possible. So public policies that improve this is try to improve information on job availability, rates of pay, locations, so that you're not looking so long for something that just doesn't exist or isn't out there, or you're asking for too much. A question I have for you guys, and this is a good question to answer, I won't answer it here, is does employment insurance increase or decrease frictional unemployment? Do people end up searching longer or less if they have access to chômage in French, or employment insurance? So think about that. The answer is pretty obvious, but I want you to think about it. Another form of frictional unemployment in this textbook is known as structural unemployment in Reagan. So structural unemployment would be in the Reagan book. Over here we'd call it frictional. So this is why it could be slightly confusing. Just see it. Don't really worry about the way you call it. It's just another form of normal, natural unemployment. Is this long-run adjustment problem of either the markets are changing through globalization, some of the industries that you used to work in just don't exist anymore, aren't competitive enough compared to other markets out there. Some of the industries that you're working in just don't exist anymore, so eventually if there's no fuel combustion cars, there's only electrical cars, well, everyone that's specialized in fuel combustion cars may lose their jobs. So in this whole grand scheme of things, if we want to reduce that unemployment, we have to find a way to retrain people or relocate them if ever those jobs are found elsewhere. So if you ever get unemployment insurance, you'll see that you have access to a lot of training programs, whether it's computer programs or other things, little courses to help you get sufficient amount of training to be able to get a job. In this textbook, though, they talk about structural unemployment, dealing with anything that deals with a structural inefficiency. Essentially, a structural inefficiency, as we're going to see in a second here, is we're going to have the demand, we're going to have the supply of workers, we're going to have the demand for workers. So this is demand and supply, which should give us an equilibrium wage. So let's just call this wages and quantity, which quantity refers to the amount of people working. Essentially, we normally expect this to be in equilibrium. But with minimum wage laws, you're going to have a situation where that wage is typically above that equilibrium wage. That's why it has an impact. Because if you're setting minimum wage at like $3 an hour, it's not going to have an impact. It's not going to improve anyone's scenario. So you're creating this gap here between what people are willing to supply and the quantity demanded. So you're going to create some unemployment there. Minimum wage laws does that. Unions making it harder to fire and maybe give a slightly better wage also leads to the same problem. An efficiency wage is really just the idea of you want to get the best workers possible, the strongest workers possible. So you're going to pay higher wages than your competition or than what the going wage is to try to attract the best workers and to retain them as long as possible. Well, by doing that, once again, if a lot of people are doing that, you're paying higher than the going wage. Therefore, a lot of people are paying above this, leading to a lot of structural unemployment. You could see it on this graph as well, this whole idea. Okay. So these are the different types of unemployment. Next up, we're going to look at calculating the level of unemployment, how it's calculated.